Hey everybody, this is Lawrence here, and welcome to another episode of Dirty Basement Terrain. Now, when it comes to making trees, I tend to go for I don't know how to really describe it, like a really nasty, twisted, evil, dead, haunted looking, just, just evil looking tree. Now, I've done several different display pieces using these trees, but I never really made any just straight up trees for using on the tabletop. So I figure with this one, I'm going to make some haunted forest tree scatter terrain. I'm going to show you how I made these. Maybe you'll find out some good ways or pick up some tips doing this. But as I said, this is just how I'm making it. Hopefully you like it. All right, later.
Okay, here we're going to be making a twisted wire armature for our trees. I'm using a 19 gauge or 1 millimeter thick wire, and I'm just wrapping it around this plastic tub lid so I don't have to, stretch individual pieces out. One thing you want to remember about using twisted wire is make whatever amount of wires you use divisible by 4. Trust me, it'll help out in the end. Right now I'm just trying to twist the bottom a little bit, and now I'm going to start cutting up the other end so I can actually start twisting my trees up. Here I'm just going to be twisting the trunk of the tree itself, just splitting all the wires evenly and then wrap it around a Sharpie marker there, and then just twist around till I get the trunk to the height that I want before I start splitting off for branches. Now that I've gotten the trunk of the tree to the height I want, I'm going to start splitting off the wires into branches and offshoots. I'm trying to keep all the numbers even, and then just basically twist. I mean, it's a pretty simple process. It can be time consuming, but it is very simple to do. It's just twist till you get to a length, split the wires evenly, and twist again. And rinse and repeat this process until you get to branches that you want. Just remember, the further up you go, the thinner it will get. If you would want, say, a thicker tree, you just use a lot more wires. I think I use 24 individual strands on this one. So, but like I said, this is a simple, but it can be a bit on the time-consuming side. But it's still a simple and easy process. It's just separate the wires and then twist. Just trying to keep the wires themselves even for each branch. So when you go to do another branch, you have a proper amount of wire. Here for the roots, it's pretty well much the same process with the branches. You just basically pull those little loops apart, cut them with the wire snips, and then twist for however many roots you want. You can do as few or as many roots as you want, depending on how many wires you have. For these trees, I'm doing 4 roots or 8. Now, I'm using floral tape to give basically what is a first layer on to the trunk of the tree and then eventually the branches. This will make sense in a later step, but this is the method I personally just like using. Some people will like using a different method, will like doing the next step for the trees themselves multiple times, but I just like doing this. It works, so I'm going to keep doing it. But it's just a matter of wrapping the floral tape around the trunk and all the branches. Though I leave the roots themselves alone because honestly it's not necessary and it eventually will make sense. Here I'm just cutting out bases for the tree. Now this particular one is a little bit bigger than the rest, so the base is obviously going to be bigger. But I'm using XPS foam. I think it's 1 inch. And like I said, just using the alpha knife and shaving away the excess bits, and then till I get the shape I want, and then I'll shave off all the sharp edges so it slopes down evenly to the table or wherever you decide to eventually put the tree. Now here, I'm just grabbing the circle bases I'm eventually going to use, and I'm tracing it out onto the foam that I'm using. And I eventually will be using a hot wire cutter, because just so I can get a rough idea of what I need. Here I've already shaved the foam to the proper angles, and I'm honestly just using some Aleene's tacky glue to glue the foam directly to the wood circle bases that I have. They're roughly about 3 1/4 inch in diameter, but again, it's just a simple glue them on. And here I'm mixing up a batch of Sculpta mold, 2 parts of Sculpta mold to 1 part water. At least that's what the instructions say. I always add a little bit more water though. You basically want to mix up to the consistency of cottage cheese. I'm just using it to... I didn't sand these bases, sand the foam or anything, and because I really don't want an ultra smooth look. And I also want to use a Sculpta mold to hold the trees into the bases themselves. It'll make sense in a little bit, but that was my thinking. There's a thought. Me think. But just basically consistently put on a nice smooth layer onto the foam until I'm happy with what it was, and then I'll press the roots of the tree into the Sculpta mold, and that way it'll hold it. And I'll push some Sculpta mold up along the sides of the roots, and when it dries, it'll hold in just fine. I've never had a problem with it coming out. Here I'm using my homemade texture paste, and I'm basically brushing it on over top of the branches and the roots and the trunk over the entire tree. This is why I put the floral tape on, so I would only have to do one layer of the texture paste. Though being that it's homemade, I could have gone cheap and then done multiple layers, and it wouldn't have been that costly. But this is just my preferred method. So I only have to do one layer of texture paste thanks to putting on all that floral tape. But again, I'm just trying to get a nice thin layer over the entire thing, and it's going to look like a dead, nasty tree that's been twisted by some evil or something or another. And here I'm using Apple Barrel's Burnt Umber to give the dirt areas a base coat. Just going for 100% coverage here. Burnt Umber Apple Barrel is my go-to for base coating dirt. You can use whatever color you want, but like I said, it's my go-to, so that's what I'm using. And here I'm using some twisted jeweler's wire that looks like rope to make some nooses to hang off the trees. I like using the twisted wire because rather than like hemp rope or some actual string, because I can twist it into whatever shape I want and it's going to stay like that, and I don't have to worry about, soaking it with glue or anything like that to keep it held in place. The wire itself will hold itself in place. And here I'm using a mix of dark blue, gray, and some burnt umber to give the trees themselves a base coat. I'm using this gray mix just to give the trees more of like a dead, dried out look to it, because, well, that's the look I'm going for. So I want the base to be just look dead and evil, kind of. And here I'm using apple barrels, nutmeg brown to give the trees themselves like I said, a mid-tone brown color. I'm going for roughly 80% coverage, leaving little pieces of the gray show through. And here for a highlight color, I'm using Territorial Beige and just giving it a quick light dry brush with a cheap makeup brush from the Dollar Tree. Like I said, this is just a quick and easy highlight. And here I'm making a mix of my dark brown wash and my black wash. Basically 50-50, because I want the trees. I don't want to go for my normal brown because that would look too alive, I guess. And mixing in with the black will give it a darker, kind of grayish look to the wash. So at least that's what my thought was when I started this. So that's what I did. And here I'm using a mix of Territorial Beige and Granite Gray to bring up the highlights and stuff again after the wash is dry. I mixed in some gray just to give it, like I said, again, I'm going for a dead, twisted, evil look. So that's what I went with these trees. Now I'm turning my attention back to the bases or the dirt areas, so I'm using a mid-tone nutmeg brown for the dirt, just going for like 85% coverage. And here I'm giving a light dry brush highlight with some Territorial Beige on the dirt. I'm using a smaller brush for this just so I can easily get in between all the roots at the base of the tree. And here I'm using some Vallejo airbrush primer on the nooses that I had put up earlier. Yeah, it's airbrush and I'm using a brush, but that's no big deal. I just trying to get these plain metal nooses primered prior to brushing. And now I'm using nutmeg brown on the nooses or the ropes, just as a base coat. And why nutmeg brown? Well, honestly, I picked that color because it was already on my plate, so. And here I'm just using some antique parchment to give a light dry brush to the nooses or the rope, just to bring it up so it stands out a little bit against the trees and anything else I may put on later. And here I'm using a 50-50 mix of water and PVA and brushing brushing it on to all the dirt areas because I'm going to be adding turf or flocking to the dirt areas now. I'm going to be using, these are all woodland scenics, fine turf, burnt grass, earth, and yellow grass. I'll use the burnt grass as my base color, and then I'll use the yellow grass as a highlight color on different areas, and then the shadowed areas I'll use the earth color. And here I'm just using some spider rings that I got at Halloween. And I'm going to be trimming off the ring part of the spiders because I want to use the spiders. And I've also gotten some plastic skull beads, as you can see there on the cutting mat, and also some other toy spiders I got at Halloween. Here I'm just priming them up and getting them ready to actually be painted. Now, I forgot to record the part where I actually sprayed on some white around the edges and the back parts of the spiders and also the skulls, but you'll see what it looks like in the next step. And here I'm just using various colors of contrast paint to paint up the spiders. I like using contrast paints on the creatures that I put on my terrain because it's quick, it's easy, and I am not a miniature painter. So contrast paints is the way to go for me. I'm using a dark, for the bigger spiders, I'm using a dark color in the middle and then using a lighter shade of that same color on the outer edge, and then a few highlight spots in the body. But other than that, that's it. No, and I do give the creepy crawlies a wash after it dries. But yeah, that's it. Now that the glue from the for the flocking is dried, I'm using some isopropyl alcohol and spreading it on to break the surface tension because I'm going to be sealing this. And then I'm going to use the 50-50 mix of water and PVA glue to pour on to all the flocking. I said this will just seal it in. And the alcohol was used to break the surface tension so the glue will actually soak all the way down into the flocking. And here I'm just using some super glue gel to glue on all the skull beads and the spiders to the bases. And I'm using some Agrax Earth Shade to give all the skulls a wash because I don't want pretty clean white skulls, and they just need to look dirty and nasty. So a quick coating of the Agrax Earth Shade will do the trick. And here I'm using some 5-minute epoxy, 0.2 ounce or 5.6 gram little things of it. I'm putting some various shades of ink into the container, and then I'll put in the epoxy, and then I'm also going to be adding like a same amount of alcohol as epoxy to the mixing cup, and then stirring it up. The alcohol will make the epoxy flow better, and it'll give you a tiny bit of extra time of use. And now I'm taking some simple little foam balls I got at the Dollar Tree and mixing it in. I'm going for spider eggs. And I don't know if this is the way it's supposed to be, but you know what? It looks gross, it looks mean and nasty, so that's what I'm doing. And here, I'm just using a coffee stir stick to attach it to the bases. And eventually the epoxy will harden up, and then they're not going anywhere. Well, if you're going to have spiders in your build, you better have spider webs. Here I'm just using some stretched out dryer sheets. Placing them where I think they look good, and then along the edges I'm using the watered down PVA glue to attach it so it'll stay there. Again, it just dried up. It's just stressed out dryer sheets, and I'm using the Roll Cool. I keep placing it until I think it looks cool, and there's no real method to how I place it. It's like I said, Roll Cool, just till you like it. Now here, this is a completely optional step depending on what you're going to be doing with your terrain, but I'm using a matte sealer on all the spider webs just to give them a little more durability. I said, if you're using it at your home game, you don't need to do this step, but accidents do happen, and let's face it, the dryer sheet spider webs are not durable at all. So they look great, but their durability is very low, and a minor bump or whatnot can actually tear them or stretch them out to a point where you don't like them. So I'm using matte sealer through my airbrush to just stiffen them up and make them more durable. Because again, even if your players are very respectful of your terrain that you make, accidents do happen. So again, this is just to protect the webs. Now I'm adding grass tufts of various colors in different places. I'm using Army Painter's Battlefield's Winter Tufts, and I'm also using Huge Miniatures, Muddy Tufts, and Muddy Mini Tufts. Again, there's no real plan on how I put these on here, but as you can see, I'm using some tweezers, grabbing them, dipping them in some tacky glue, and then placing them where I think it looks good. Again, this is a spot where you want to go with the Roll Cool and just keep going or putting them in places you think looks cool. There's no real way for me to explain it other than like, if it looks good to you, then that's where it needs to be. And here they are, all done, ready for the tabletop or the next game. Definitely gonna run some haunted forest with these, or spider forest, whatever.
Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watched it to the end. And as always, I really do appreciate that. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to leave a comment down below or off to the side. Or you guys know by now, I don't know where the comment section is, but leave a comment. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. I am making more videos, so they are coming. May take an extra day or two, depending on the project. If it's a big one, it may take, bigger projects take a little bit more time, but I am making more videos. If you want to get a hold of me directly, you can come to the Discord page, or you can contact me by email. Both links to those are in the About tab of the Dirty Basement homepage. Come to the Discord. Lots of people there. You'll see constant updates of whatever video I'm working on, maybe like every day or two. Lots of people there, great crafters looking for advice, or come and show off your projects. I would love to see what you guys are making. So come, drop a pip. Again, I would love to see what you guys are doing. But always remember, guys, when you're making your terrain, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's still just your terrain.